Welcome each and all to this wonderful 3 years long conversation that we've been having. Gems from the wisdom traditions put on by Still and Moving Center. And our topic for this week is the idea of ourselves as energy custodians. And this is the year of citizens of the future. So within that concept of what does it mean to be a citizen of the future is this idea of being energy custodians. And I'm going to read a couple Einstein quotes that have to do with energy, and I think it gives a nice vision for us to begin with. Do you remember how electrical currents and unseen waves were laughed at? The knowledge about man is still in its infancy. So we're going to be getting into a topic that really has a lot to do, I think, with things that are somewhat mysterious. And here's the other quote I'd like to read you from Einstein. Everything is energy, and that's all there is to it. Match the frequency of the reality you want, and you cannot help but get that reality. There can be no other way. All right, so I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Randy Wong, and he is someone who has been teaching Tai Chi for us at Still and Moving Center for a number of years. He studied Tai Chi as well as numerous other martial arts forms. And he's also an MD. And so he has studied science at some pretty important and relevant levels in terms of science and our human system. And we have a special guest, a friend of Randy's, who's also an MD, Dr. Greg Ewan, and also a Tai Chi teacher. So I think that they're going to be a dynamic duo by the time we get into our conversation portion. So let's turn it over to you, Randy.
Well, thank you, Renee.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my friend Greg actually has been teaching Tai Chi longer than I have. So he's the Batman, I'm Robin. And we also are forming a group, the Karaoke Cruisers. So we we have the energy of song in our hearts as well. Thank you, Kevin, for finding that passage from, it's actually Carolyn Mace. She pronounces it Mace, but it's spelled M-Y-S-S. She's an intuitive healer. And so that was the passage that was sent out with the emails. But I'm going to take us back before the Big Bang, if you want to go back that far. In that state, and in Tai Chi, we call it the Wu Chi state. It is the state of the universe before there was yin and yang, before there was the Big Bang and the creation, essentially. And if you go back into Ayurvedic teachings, there were 3 concepts at the time: San, Chit, and Ananda. San was the concept of an awareness, or basically a concept of thought. And from that thought, this mind, essentially this mindfulness of wisdom and knowledge that is basically everything. It is the wisdom of the all-powerful all being. There was the concept of chit, which is this awareness of thought being aware of itself. So in some circles, they call this the mind of God, if you would, all powerful, all knowing. And it existed in a state of ananda, a state of bliss. And before the Big Bang, this was all that was. It's essentially the very elemental basis for an idea that basically decided to create the Big Bang. And as it did so, it created the yin and the yang. And from yin and yang, then the multiple states of polarity existed. They say the creation of 10,000 things that then noticed the interchange and relationship between hot and cold, light and dark, male and female, the polarities of existence at the point of the Big Bang. These 10,000 things started reacting and in relation to each other that made it a very interesting place. And so we are products of that creation. And it is our basically privilege to be able to observe and watch with this thought process in the expression of thought and energy in play with each other that has now become the entertaining passage of time in relation as these relationships start unfolding. So energy by itself is sort of like, if you think of kinetic energy or a battery that is not connected to anything, it just is. But once you connect it to a circuit, now the electrons start to flow. Things become interesting. And that's where Tai Chi, in a sense, has become an expression of that interplay. And the interplay can be somewhat chaotic at times, but when we practice Tai Chi, we actually work to balance these expressions and relationships. So in that sense, balance is how we find harmony in this system of entropy, basically understanding the basis for order and how order is created through energy and thought. So we had a discussion earlier today at Kapilani Park after our Tai Chi class that, current scientific method, or basically the Western method of understanding reality, has not been able to measure chi energy, which is well regarded in traditional Chinese medicine as that force, or the force in Star Wars, if you would, to produce life as we know it. And they've never really been able to measure it with scientific instruments. And so my thought is, it is, in fact, what Einstein had called, I think, a spooky phenomenon at a distance, or something like that. It was the elusive bit of information that he could not put into a formula, or a calculation. It was that thing that really held him up from finding the unified theory of the universe. And even now, I think, even with special relativity physics and theoretical quantum understanding. It's something that's just a little bit beyond our fingertips, and we're not able to actually grasp it. But my thought is, if you have a relationship between thought and energy, now you have something special that is probably that elusive characteristic of Qi, which is in Tai Chi, is what actually moves and actually runs our body systems. So I'm actually happy that my friend Greg is on board, because he is looking at the process of this thought and energy, and how we can use it in self-massage process called Do-In. And he's going to be introducing to that us to that concept with Renée and David Sanders, I think, in their classes tomorrow. He'll be joining us in our Tai Chi class in a couple of weeks as well. And so anyway, let me just bounce that off of Batman. Greg, what do you think?
I actually tend not to have such a big cosmic picture of things, although it has been quite helpful in my own background and so forth. I understand the situation of not being able to measure the Qi per se, but in fact there are instruments that people are using in what is called electrodermal screening, where they kind of hook you up with the electrodes and are able to tell the level of Qi flow, if you want to call it that, in various meridians, the channels in your body. Dr. Carlos Lam, I don't know if any of you knew him. He was here. He's passed on now, but he was a practitioner of this kind of technology. They call it electroacupuncture according to Voll, V-O-L-L. He was the one that made the first machine that could measure these kinds of things. And I haven't really been current with the technology, but I'm sure it's quite advanced, because I've seen some other devices that can, really identify various energies in your body and kind of put it in a very graphic way on screens and so forth. So with that ability, then they will make recommendations of what kind of remedies would be helpful to balance these energies, that type of thing.
Yeah, I know that there are instruments that will measure bioelectric potential. And so I think science is slow to catch up with these concepts that have been around for 3,000 years in traditional Chinese medicine. And there is more and more information coming out with the process. I remember when the Dalai Lama met with some of the top physicists in Europe, he basically was giving them the answer to some of the research that they've been developing. And of course, Western science has been around for 200 years or 300 years, and based on scientific Koch's principles. And they're going about it in a way to test and validate, I think, the results. And they were looking at the Dalai Lama thinking, you came to a conclusion that we are finding, and that idea has been around in Buddhist literature for centuries. And so it is interesting how the two approaches are coming to the same end point of understanding reality, but taking different routes to get there.
Yeah, from one thing from the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, they talk about this ultimate truth, if you will, and they they describe it as emptiness. That's the term that they use. It's not the same kind of emptiness that we normally think of. And it's not exactly nothingness per se. The way they describe it is they say that things exist, but the sort of, you could say the essence of it is sort of like lacking in a way. And it has a lot to do, I think, with this similar finding in quantum physics, where, you know, we all know that we're there, you know, we're made up of atoms and all that. But if you really dig down into the makeup of an atom, you find that it's really mostly space. A lot of it's just space. So it really kind of coincides very similarly to the way that the Tibetan Buddhists are looking at things.
My initial question is this: so many times, just in daily life, we have the feeling of low energy. I've run out of energy. And from this grander perspective, all we are is energy. So how could we ever possibly run out of energy? So I wondered if you could talk about that phenomenon and what we can do about it.
When you said that people are running out of energy because we are mortal soul, we live in the field of duality. We live in, so when we meditate or do standing and standing qigong, we take astral energy, which is circling around and around, and fill this energy into our body so that we won't lose energy. But if we don't do Tai Chi, standing qigong, or meditation, those cosmic energy could not be recharged. We can only get it from sleep. But furthermore, I shouldn't say, but furthermore, in the society that is so agitated, not too many people get a quality sleep. So if you rip off their REM sleep, their deep sleep, you don't get any opportunity to recharge. Therefore, the phenomena of getting tired are increasing, especially after COVID. I hope it addressed the concern that a lot of people saying there are two fields. One is astral energy, one is that is run and run and run, like Dr. Yuan said about, or Randy said about, it's eternal, you know, it's Wuji. But as a person, we don't live in the Wuji state. If we live in the Wuji state, we transcend duality already. Okay, well, that's all.
Oh, thank you so much. So if I could just briefly restate what I heard you say, is that we are always, it's always possible for us to avail ourselves of a more subtle energy, a more cosmic energy, a more universal energy. And as human beings, it depends how we, what we do with our consciousness, basically. I mean, if we're using our consciousness to engage in Tai Chi or Qigong or meditation, or any one of a number of other practices, it sounds like we can avail ourselves of this greater energy. And failing to do that, we have to just resort to our just natural sleep. And that's not always so good in modern life. Carolyn, can I call on you? I see your hands up.
Yes, I have kind of two questions. Maybe you just answered the first one. When we say energy, is all energy the same? But you're speaking of a higher, finer level of energy. So these two gentlemen who have, you know, engaged in practitioner for so many years, And that's maybe the other way I'd ask the question is, if I sit down for meditation and try to practice what I've heard about Tai Chi, will I be drawing in the same energy as somebody in China or one of you, or is the energy we draw in peculiar to us and our state of mind or our whole the energy field we were born into or something like that? So I'd like to hear more about that. And my other question is, what is the benefit of practicing Tai Chi? Maybe I get a lot of energy if I run around the block 3 times and don't have to sit still or something. So those are my 2. Is there one type of energy that anyone who practices Tai Chi will need to draw upon? And what's the benefit of engaging in Tai Chi?
Yeah, attempt an answer, and then Greg, I'm sure you can pop in with your perspective. We often say that if you are breathing and alive, you have this chi energy within you. It is the life force that is circulating through your body. What Tai Chi does is to allow you to better understand the body mechanics, how you can then direct it by relieving obstruction or stagnation. And when it is flowing freely and easily, then health is restored in terms of restoring balance to your cellular function. So if you think of again, I'm using the battery as a metaphor for the storage of your energy. Once it's connected to a circuit, you might have resistors, capacitors, or other items in that circuit. And a lot of that takes energy to actually run the motors and turn on the lights and so forth. At some point, however, we do choose to disconnect or reconnect into other circuits that may help to recharge the battery or drain its power. When I started doing Tai Chi, I couldn't figure out. We were at Kapiolani Park for 3 hours practicing, and I would think after all that exercise, you'd probably be depleted and you'd want to go home and take a nap. But I couldn't figure out why I felt like I needed to mow the lawn and trim the hedge. It was I had this extra boost. And I thought, okay, something is going on there. And it's not something that I really could explain. I was a physician at the time, but I thought, something is happening, and it's a very positive thing. And in the human mind, in order for us to understand things, we tend to break it down, and so we're putting things into compartments, and we're thinking, okay, is it a different energy than what other people are experiencing? But in my simple mind, I'm thinking, if you just understand that it is this life force, and in Star Wars, they put it out there, it is the force, and it is in a sense, it's the same sort of thing that we can break it down into electromagnetic, or even the visual spectrum of light, how there are different colors and so forth to create different types of energy. But elementally, it is just that, in my simple mind, a common energy that the traditional Chinese medicine practitioners have called qi. So, Greg, what do you think?
Yes, well, you probably are aware that a very many traditions have this different concepts and names for it, like in the Hindu tradition, it would be prana. The Hawaiians would call it mana, and so there's different names for the same kind of vital force. Yeah. I wanted to start out by maybe answering Renee's initial question, and then I'll go back to, I think it was Carolyn's. Renee, you mentioned about kind of a feeling like a lack of energy, and I think, as Randy said, there's energy all around us, and we think of chi everywhere, and as well, if we are alive, definitely the chi is still running. But when you feel like you're kind of drained and a low energy, what that suggests is that there's some kind of imbalance in the flow of the chi in your bodies related to your organ systems. And in Chinese medicine, maybe there's deficiency going on, or maybe could be excess going on in various channels. And so your overall functionality is kind of reduced somehow. Maybe you need to eat more food, maybe you need to rest, could be a number of various things that could make things better, but it's really about kind of like balancing things a little bit. Something you could say is certainly out of balance if you're like low energy. Maybe you just need to sleep, or maybe just overworking or something like that. So you need to just balance in that respect. Now, as far as Carolyn's question, it's kind of I was chuckling to myself, because whenever I get new students to come to my class, I always ask them, why are we doing Tai Chi? Why don't we run around the block? Why are we doing Tai Chi? So my explanation in terms of that question is to say, the reason we do Tai Chi is we are journeying with our mind through our body. Okay. It's kind of like a mindful journey as we're moving around all these movements. In the Tai Chi classics, they say where your mind goes, the chi goes. And in Chinese medicine, they say where the chi goes, the blood goes. So as you are moving, you are following with your mind through your body, and you are circulating your chi and your blood. So all this good circulation brings good oxygen, nutrients, cleans out carbon dioxide, toxins. Your body is going to be feeling really good because you're just really giving a lot of good, loving attention. Yeah. So that's what Tai Chi is. Okay. In my mind, it's really no different than yoga. And I don't want to speak for yoga, because I don't teach yoga. I do some yoga myself. But I've read, for example, what's the name? I can't remember the name of yoga teacher who wrote Light in Yoga. Maybe David would know that teacher. Light in Yoga, that teacher. He wrote an autobiography, and much of the way that he describes the energy flows in his body and all that kind of thing so similarly remind me of what it's like to practice Tai Chi and get in touch with that energy. So it's a universal thing, really. It's not just our personal thing. The energy is there, and it's our opportunity to tap into that. It's available. It's there all the time.
If you think of radio waves or even electromagnetic fields, we're limited with our 5 senses to be able to detect them. However, I think, with Carolyn Mace's energy anatomy, if you consider your chakras, energy centers, when they line up, you have the heart center, which is a center for feeling, and actually is sort of the manifestation center for our energy. And then you also have the 6th center, which is your brain and sort of that mental awareness thing going on. Many of us, because these centers are separate from each other, they never come together. So if you can, and this is, I think, what Tai Chi does for me, is allows the brain, which is normally acting in the beta range, to actually convert to alpha. And if you meditate from the alpha, you can actually get down into delta, which is the sleep range, but with an awareness of thought that you can experience sensations that would not otherwise be felt by our usual five senses. And so what meditation has done for me is to find the center point. If you look at the logo for the Still and Moving Center, it is a still point. It is where the pendulum is at rest. It's just sitting there still, not moving. But like many pendulums, somebody comes to bump it, it starts swinging. And once it starts swinging, a lot of people, they lose the location of where that still point is. So if you can find that center, which is another way of saying it is you're in the eye of the hurricane, everything is chaotic around you, but you can observe all that chaos. And you can decide if you want to partake of that motion or not. But if you always remember where that center point is, you can find the point of balance, and you can get out of the chaos when you need to. So it is, and the other thing I was kind of like reminded to say is that energy is interchangeable. With Einstein's research, he was saying that energy and matter can be interchanged. And it's so light can become heat that basically can have an effect on matter and mass. And so things are interchangeable, and it's really how things balance is where we have ease versus dis-ease. And so in health, this is what we're recommending, is basically find the balance. And I think this is why we do Tai Chi.
I love what Randy shared. Definitely love what you said. You mentioned about beta. I happen to be, my profession is neurofeedback therapist. So I deal with beta wave. Anxieties are always, mostly can see their beta waves out of whack. And you always do, meditative mindfulness, cognitive behavior therapy to move their beta into the alpha range. But what's beauty about Tai Chi is, for example, I use myself as an example. I have an aura ring. How many people know aura ring? The aura ring that you wear on the fingertip that register your REM sleep and deep sleep. Anyone knows that?
No.
I guess not. So as I'm doing Tai Chi, especially at nighttime, when I got up, if I couldn't sleep, I just do standing gong. And aura ring registered for REM. So although you can see the moving of the body constantly adjusting, allow the ball to roll, the ball meaning the chi rolling, you can really feel it. And the aura ring registered deep sleep, REM sleep, which means as we do in Tai Chi, the benefits of Tai Chi is a lower your energy consumption. Therefore, you prolong your longevity. You live longer because you conserved your energy while you're doing the Tai Chi or meditation. It's a conscious sleep versus sleep is an unconscious meditation. So either way, the ultimate goal is to get maximum amount of prana through conserving, not using so much precious gold beta brainwave, but going down to the lower brainwave, which is alpha, or even better theta. So I hope it makes sense. Yeah, the aura ring really register the power of Tai Chi, how it lower your busy mind, monkey mind into that theta brainwave. Theta brainwave is a twilight brainwave before you about to fall asleep. So yeah, that's the benefits for me personally, why I practice Tai Chi.
There was a study that showed hour for hour of exercise that you do extends your life expectancy on the back end. So
Yes.
that actually, says something. Although there's also another study that was talking about why so many marathon runners would be dropping dead at the finish line with heart attacks. So there's a conflicting evidence out there. But I do think that I like what Hannah said, that I think if you can get your mind body into a hibernation state, essentially that's where I think you're kind of linking up with this deep meditation. It is restorative for your tissue function, and
Yes.
gives the in fact, just as an aside, another idea came in. I have been using cold lasers in my practice for it's over a decade now. And the reason most MDs don't do this is because the chiropractors picked it up first. So they said, oh, it must be bogus if they're using it. But NASA research showed over 30 years ago that there was a biologic effect of photon stimulation. So we know it happens in plants because they have chlorophyll. The photons stimulate the chlorophyll to produce sugar. In the animal cell, photons do have an effect. It actually increases the ATP, which is the energy substrate of the cell in the mitochondria. And so now you have energized cells that are able, they basically have the energy to now proceed with DNA, RNA replication and protein synthesis. So cellular function is enhanced. And what I've found, and some of the research that actually initially came out of the dental literature, was that 8 out of 10 patients will notice an anti-inflammatory effect, which reduces pain by 50% or more. So we do this for our surgeries, and I send my patients home on Tylenol. So we don't prescribe narcotics anymore. And it does have a very, very good effect. The first patient I used it on was in the burn unit. And I just did one leg. He had a steam burn on both legs. And the next day he was begging me to do the other leg because he had no pain in the first leg. So there are energy phenomena that do occur that we can't really see or measure. And when I talk to my colleagues about it, they're kind of looking at me like, who would think you're just shining a light on tissue and it does respond this way, but it does. Now industry is starting to pick it up. They actually have these red LED lights for, they put them in caps to grow hair. They're using it for weight loss. They're using it for all kinds of things. It has been FDA approved for arthritic pain. So it's just a matter of time when some of the energy modalities are now starting to become a part of mainstream clinical care.
I want to ask about something, and this is for really the whole group. When I think of this concept of energy custodians and how we can be our own energy custodians, in addition to that feeling sometimes of being de-energized or drained, I also notice that, it could be a physiological thing, like I need more sleep, I need more water, I need more, something on the physical plane. But you have both mentioned thoughts, and I'm in part asking this for Diana Bonici, who's a counselor. And it's my experience that depending on the way that I use my thoughts, I'm going to have different amounts of energy. If I engage in angry thoughts that lead to angry emotions, that can just absolutely wipe me out. Similarly, if I engage in kind of depressive thoughts, that's not going to have the blitz effect. It's going to have like this gradual kind of disintegration of energy effect. And I imagine people have these similar kinds of experiences. The way that we use our minds affects our energy. And when, on the other hand, I allow my mind to engage in delight and awe, inspiration, like my whole energy level is woo, doo, 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 doo. Like when I get to play with my 3 and 5-year-old grandchildren, and we're playing some wonderful imagination game. Kind of like when you're saying you did 3 hours of Tai Chi and you want to go home and mow the lawn. It's a different kind of energy. It's not necessarily my physical energy is that much raised, but some other kind of energy is higher as a result of how I use my mind. And delight is one of the ones that raises my energy level. So, Diana, do you want to make any comment on that to begin with?
Well, I agree with you. I think that for me, I think that we do use our mind, and that does create our emotions and thoughts. It's our thoughts that will create our energy level. And I think that's a really important part, to be aware of where our mind is taking us. And for me, I really work with people to learn that they do have control. They think they have no ability to change their thinking or change what's going on or their emotions. But if we can change our thinking, we can change our emotions. And I just want to add, for me, Tai Chi is a time, it's a moving meditation, but I can feel the energy moving through my whole body. And by the end, I'm sweating and I'm tired and I'm hot, but I'm energized. And it's just a different kind of experience than even I meditate, but it's a different kind of movement and energy movement. And I think that that's really important as a way of even working with our thoughts, because we step back from who we are as an ego and we move into a different energy form. But I'd be interested in Greg or Randy speaking to that issue.
Well, thank you, Diana. I do think that it is not just, and thank you, Renee, for bringing us back to the word custodians, because there are these systems that are circulating in our bodies. That term custodian leads me to think that we have a responsibility and a choice in what kind of foods we put into ourselves, the activities and how we interact with our surroundings. And one of the principles by which I teach Tai Chi is relationship and connection. So we do have the responsibility and choices in how we actually use the energy, how we restore the energy. And it is a constant thing every day. We have to make these decisions. And I think what Greg and I present are options to manage the energy systems within us. Greg, comments?
Yeah, I was going to respond to Diana a bit. From the Tibetan Buddhist point of view, they talk about discursive thoughts, and you could think of that as sort of like your monkey mind going off, chattering all kinds of various things. When you become aware of your body, when you focus on the feelings and sensations in your body, you're no longer in that kind of discursive thought mode. You're in a more of a somatic meditation mode, if you will. It's a very different place, and you kind of just let go of all that thinking. And that's why it kind of brings you to this kind of calm place where you're not bothered by, whatever that stuff is going on in your mind. So that's what's one benefit of doing Tai Chi. And so you really do have to connect that mind to the sensations in your body. And then you can kind of keep those discursive thoughts away.
What they were calling no man's gate, no thought. And that's what I love about Nia dance. It takes you into that somato, emotional somato release. And these so good, so good. Yes. Before I never understood what it means, say no thought. I said, I always have thought. Bad thoughts are good thoughts. And then I finally understand it. It's about observer. We experientially noticing how the heat is being generated, how the moon, the cold temperature coming from the feet, hot temperature from the sun, how we are the conduit, start to circle around. And the idea of our thoughts is in the way as like an impedance to slow down that movement of that ball, that energy, that prana, that chi, that might be the origin of disease. I don't know. I'm just asking two of you, but that's my personal contemplation of reduction of energy, reduction of ATP. Could it be something to do? Our mind is in the way, to stop the natural occurrences of the body movement. Body is a god.
Just what you said there about the mind getting in the way. I want to bring up the concept of placebo. And if placebo, I mean, basically in Western science, placebo is kind of like it's a fluke. It's something that is, happens just at random and so forth. But I do think that if we can harness placebo, which actually it can be linked between mind and body, and regulate or basically direct the placebo effect for beneficial health, that I think carries a lot of power. So, on the electromagnetic spectrum, you've got frequencies of waves, and the frequency and amplitude of the waves create the phenomenon that we see in electricity or light or sound. There is another concept I want to bring up. It's called synchronization. All biologic organisms have this tendency to synchronize with others in their species or with their environment. And so when you can get a synchronization of, let's just put it this way, sound, if it's organized in a certain way of regular rhythms, it actually causes people to get up and dance, okay, because they're synchronizing with in resonance with the music. And so the same thing I think happens in the light spectrum and in the rest of the electromagnetic spectrum that we don't see, radio waves and so forth. So if you can bring the mind to higher levels of thought and appreciation, and particularly gratitude and love, when you get to those levels, that's when the miracles really show up. That's where I think thought drives, I think, the life force to higher levels. And it's through synchronization, resonance. And I think when you get to the higher levels, we really can shun, I think, sort of the negativity and sort of the lower level frequencies that may be plaguing us.
Yes, Satya Ananda. If we were in the bliss state, why would we go back to hatred, anger? it doesn't make any sense.
David, I saw your hand up. Do you still have a question there or a thought bubbling up?
Yeah, I was thinking, the brain is only 2% of our body weight, and it consumes 20% of our energy. And so I know when we get in conversations like this, where we're trying to explain the unexplainable, it's really burning up the calories. You'll see people nodding off in conversations like this because the brain is just overwhelmed. The Tao that can be explained is not the Tao, right? So here we're trying to explain the unexplainable. So naturally, we're consuming an awful lot of energy in that process. One expression that I use in my yoga classes around prana or chi is that it has intelligence. So it is in fact intelligence itself. So when we, similar to Tai Chi, where our attention goes, our prana flows, and that prana is intelligent. So where we're weak, prana will strengthen us. Where there's stagnation, it will move. When there is tension, it will release it. There's a natural intelligence, and all we need to do is direct our attention to that area, whether it's in our heart or our mind or our body, at any of those levels that we talk about like they're separately, but we know they're not really. And so the notion that prana is intelligent is, for me, kind of sums it up nicely.
That's really beautiful. Thank you. I'm looking at our time, and I like to do something that I usually do at our Sunday get together called satsang. And that is to invite everyone to just share a takeaway, something that came up to you as we were having our conversation today that you want to think about a little more. You want to bring that into your life. So I'll just let you each share with us what might be your takeaway. I'm going to ask Ed if he wants to go first.
This has been a really amazing seminar and talk, because it's brought together all the ideas of what I wondered what energy was about. Because when we practice yoga, although we don't many years ago, the teacher would tell us to breathe into that area where we felt uncomfortable or pain. And then we started, and then later on we discovered Feldenkrais. And one of our teachers said, well, you've got spinal problems, you can release it. You just breathe in that part and think of moving that part of the spine out or in or sideways. And you might find, things work, more release, or your whole body will feel more relaxed. And then in Nia, we also discovered other things. And then with our chiropractor as well, breathing helped us move energy. And somehow after concentrating on breathing, I was able to release certain parts of my body that was aching or in pain. So I guess it all boils down to energy, isn't it? From what we've learned today, being able to tap into the energy, being able to move that energy, to harness some energy from the universe or outside, which we've also learned from Dr. Wong, from the few classes we've taken with him. So that's my takeaway for today. Thank you.
Thank you. Joy, do you have a takeaway you want to share?
Oh, I thoroughly enjoyed this session. I don't know, but it's given me so much energy. I just want to jump around because there's so many pearls. I think I need to rewatch this because, so many wonderful, so many wonderful insights and I guess, in India, we call them pearls, right, Renee? So much of it. And my body just wants to jump around right now because I love it. I love what I heard. Mahalo.
Much. Ah,
Okay. I was reminded of something that I was taught long ago by a Theravadan Buddhist teacher in a large group of different people who practice very different things. She told us that we were all responsible for everything that was going on in the world, including all the bad things, but that there was a way that we could connect and undo a lot of that. I'm not sure that I felt that I wanted to be part of that, because I didn't want to tap into something that I would have so much responsibility for. But she said it was a practice called metta, and that it was a very physical one, and that we all had to get up and stand around together and hold hands. I don't usually go for that sort of thing, but I did because I was a guest. And believe it or not, we were doing the metta meditation, which was to release all the wonderful positive energy into the world to undo the misery and suffering that was going on and is constantly going on in the world. And it was quite an amazing experience for me. It took away all my disbelief, because I stood there and held hands with people I had no idea of where they came from or who they were, but we were all letting go some incredible, powerful energies, positive energies that I'm not sure whether they lifted the world or didn't, but I think we've all felt that at that moment there was some great release of something very positive that is a practice that these people keep doing all the time. And in Christianity, it's a kind of prayer, large circles of people who have prayer circles. I found out that this is something people do everywhere, all over the world in different forms. So I would suggest that maybe these energies, positive, negative, are not just ours to deal with for ourselves, but they do have, somebody touched on that before, I think, Carolyn, that is really something that's going on all the time with everyone. And what we're releasing as we breathe and walk and talk and relate to one another is very powerful, and we have to be very careful with it and cautious and generous with it. Because we make up the world, we make up what's happening in the world with these energies.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much. What a beautiful way, I think, to close. I'm seeing we've gone past the top of the hour with those three beautiful shares. What I'd like to do is tell you what we're going to be doing next week, and let somebody maybe decide that they would like to offer a vote of thanks to Randy Wong and also Dr. Greg Ewan, both doctors. And then after we do that, we have the vote of thanks, then we'll keep the session open for a few minutes for anybody who wants to stay on, because I didn't get to find out from all of you what your takeaways were. So if anybody wants to stay on, we want to make sure that you get a chance to do that. So we're moving from this week being energy custodians. By the way, in our Still and Moving Center Almanac, the last day of the week will be a quote from Debbie Rosas: "Your energy is of pure light and love, empty radiance." Seems very much akin to what Pearl was just talking about. And then for next week, we'll take up the topic of creators of beloved community, a topic that particular phrase was used by Dr. Martin Luther King and others as well, but from him especially. And we have Kylin Reese, who has been doing amazing work here on island in terms of getting back some of the almost lost musical traditions, especially with strings. So if you receive our Life at the Center letters, our most recent letter was about Kylan Reese's work. So I look forward to us hearing from him on this idea of creating beloved community through the tradition of music. So do we have somebody who would like to give our kind of twofold presenters a vote of thanks?
Thank you, Dr. Wong. Thank you, Greg.
Welcome.
Michael?
It's the very synchrony that brought us together. And thank you for being our guiding light,
Yes,
both
indeed.
doctors. Thank you.
And it was nice to hear from two practitioners of what they were explaining to us. Your experience and the clarity of your offerings were very appreciated.
Indeed. Yeah, thank you so much.